I'm Sophia Laurent. I'm 32 years old, and at my grandmother's funeral, I learned exactly how much my family valued me. While everyone else walked away with millions, I got handed an envelope with a plane ticket inside. They laughed. They actually laughed at me in front of the lawyer, in front of everyone. But what they didn't know was that ticket was worth more than everything they'd just inherited combined. Have you ever felt completely invisible in your own family? Like, no matter what you accomplished, it would never be enough? Drop your location in the comments and hit that subscribe button because you'll definitely want to see what happened when they discovered who I really was. The morning of my grandmother Marguerite's funeral was gray and cold. Typical November weather in Greenwich, Connecticut. I stood in my small Boston apartment, staring at the black dress hanging on my closet door. The dress was elegant but understated, purchased on a museum curator's salary. Nothing like what my twin siblings would be wearing, I was sure. My phone buzzed, a text from my mother. Don't be late, and please try to look presentable. I was 32 years old with 2 graduate degrees, and my mother still spoke to me like I was a disappointment she couldn't quite hide. I texted back a simple, "See you there," and finished my coffee. The funeral was held at Greenwich's oldest Episcopal church, the kind of place where Connecticut's elite had been marrying and burying their own for 200 years. When I arrived, I could see the parking lot filled with Mercedes, BMWs, and Teslas. My 10-year-old Honda Civic looked apologetic among them. Inside, the church was filled with white roses, Marguerite's favorite. I touched one of the petals gently as I walked down the aisle. My grandmother had been 88 years old, elegant until the very end, still speaking French when she was emotional, still wearing her signature Hermes scarves, even in the hospital. "Sophia, over here!" My mother's voice cut through the quiet murmur of arriving guests. Catherine Loren Morrison stood near the front pew, perfectly coiffed in head-to-toe black Chanel. Next to her, my twin brother Brandon was checking his phone, and my twin sister Victoria was adjusting her hat for maximum Instagram appeal. I slid into the pew beside them. Nobody hugged me. Nobody asked how I was doing. "Try not to cry too obviously during the service," my mother whispered. "We need to maintain dignity." I wanted to laugh. Maintain dignity. As if grief wasn't dignified enough on its own. The service was beautiful. The priest spoke about Marguerite's journey from France to America, about the hospitality empire she'd built, about her legendary elegance and sharp business mind. What he didn't mention was how she'd sit with me for hours in museums, teaching me about art and beauty and why things mattered beyond their price tags. After the service, we gathered at my Uncle Pierre's estate for the reception. The house was massive, all glass and steel, overlooking Long Island Sound. Catering staff moved through crowds offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres. It felt less like mourning and more like networking. "Sophia!" my Uncle Pierre approached with his usual broad smile. "How's the museum treating you?" "Still playing with dusty paintings?" "It's fulfilling work," I said quietly. "Well, that's what matters, I suppose. Fulfillment. Though it doesn't pay the bills like real business does, eh?" He laughed at his own joke and moved on to greet more important guests. I found myself standing alone near the windows, watching boats on the Sound, when my grandmother's attorney approached. Alexander Beaumont was in his 60s, distinguished, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Miss Laurent," he said gently, "I'm so sorry for your loss. Your grandmother spoke of you often. Thank you, Mr. Beaumont. She was everything to me." "I know. She knew that, too." He paused. "The family has been asked to gather in the library at 4 o'clock for the reading of the will. I wanted to give you advance notice." My stomach tightened. The will. Of course. That's what this was really about, wasn't it? Not grief, but money. At precisely 4 o'clock, we assembled in Uncle Pierre's library. My mother and her husband Richard took the leather sofa. Uncle Pierre sat behind his desk as if he owned the moment. Brandon and Victoria claimed the remaining chairs. I stood near the bookshelf, as usual, finding myself without a seat. Mr. Beaumont opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick document. Thank you all for gathering. Marguerite Laurent's will is straightforward in most respects, but I want to preface this by saying she gave considerable thought to each bequest. Can we skip the preamble? Brandon asked, not looking up from his phone. I have a call at 5. Mr. Beaumont's expression remained neutral, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Disapproval, maybe. Very well. To my daughter, Catherine Laurent Morrison. I leave my Paris apartment on Ile Saint-Louis, including all furnishings, artwork, and wine collection. My mother actually gasped. The Paris apartment? That's worth at least $22 million. To my son, Pierre Laurent, I leave my California real estate portfolio, including properties in Beverly Hills, Malibu, and San Francisco. Uncle Pierre pumped his fist under the table. The West Coast portfolio. Mother knew I'd wanted that for years. To my grandson, Brandon Laurent, I leave my penthouse in Manhattan and my vintage wine collection from the Bordeaux estate. Brandon finally looked up from his phone and smiled. The penthouse? Now we're talking. To my granddaughter, Victoria Laurent, I leave the family yacht Isabella and the villa in Cap Ferret. Victoria was already pulling out her phone to photograph the moment. This is literally perfect. The content opportunities are endless. Mr. Beaumont paused and looked directly at me. My heart hammered. This was it. Grandma had always been closest to me. We'd spent every summer together when I was growing up. She'd taught me French, taken me to museums, shared stories about building her business from nothing. Surely she'd left me something significant. And to my granddaughter, Sophia Laurent, Mr. Beaumont continued, his voice softening slightly, I leave this envelope. He held up a simple cream-colored envelope. The room fell silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then Brandon laughed. Actually laughed out loud. An envelope? Victoria's voice dripped with mock sympathy. Oh, Sophia, that's so sad. My mother reached over and patted my hand with exaggerated concern. Well, honey, I'm sure there's something meaningful inside. Maybe a nice letter or some jewelry. But I could see it in their faces. They thought it was hilarious. Poor Sophia, the overlooked granddaughter who'd spent every summer with Mémé, who'd been her chess partner and confidant, had been left with an envelope while everyone else got millions. Apparemment, grand-mère ne t'aimait pas autant, my mother said with a little laugh, attempting French. Apparently, grandmother didn't love you as much. The words hit me like a physical blow. My vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall. Uncle Pierre leaned back in his chair, smirking. Maybe it's Monopoly money. That would be about right for your luck, Sophia. Or maybe it's advice about finding a husband, Victoria suggested, and my mother actually giggled. I stood up, my legs shaking. If you'll excuse me, I need some air. I heard my mother's voice as I left the library. She's always been so dramatic. Marguerite probably left her something appropriate for her station. I made it to the bathroom before the first tears fell. I locked the door and sat on the closed toilet lid, clutching the envelope. My hands were trembling as I carefully opened it. Inside was a first-class plane ticket to Las Vegas, dated for next week, and beneath it, a note in my grandmother's distinctive handwriting, written in French. Ma chérie Sophia, le vrai héritage commence maintenant. Trust activated on your 32nd birthday. Time to claim your empire. Those who laughed today will understand tomorrow. Je t'aime, mon trésor. Always. Mémé. I stared at the words. Trust activated. Empire.
What empire?
With shaking hands, I looked deeper into the envelope. There was a business card. Prince Philippe de Monaco, Private Wealth Management, with an elegant gold crest and a Monaco phone number. And beneath that, a single sheet of paper with a Credit Suisse letterhead. Account summary for the Sophia Laurent Trust. Balance, $425 million. I stopped breathing. The numbers swam before my eyes. $425 million. This had to be a mistake, some kind of clerical error. But the letterhead looked legitimate. The account number seemed real, and my grandmother's handwriting was unmistakable. I sat there for 10 minutes just staring at that paper, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Finally, I folded everything carefully back into the envelope and walked out of the bathroom. The reception was still going on, but I couldn't hear the conversations anymore. Everything sounded muffled, distant. I saw my family laughing, toasting their inheritances, already planning how to spend their millions. Nobody noticed when I slipped out the front door and drove back to Boston. Back in my tiny apartment in Cambridge, I sat on my worn sofa and pulled out the Credit Suisse statement again. The numbers hadn't changed. $425 million. I grabbed my laptop and searched for the bank's international customer service line. It was nearly midnight in Switzerland, but the number rang through immediately. After being transferred twice and providing extensive verification information, a banker with impeccable English came on the line. Yes, Miss Laurent. I have your account information here. How may I assist you this evening? My throat was dry. I received a statement. I just want to verify that it's real. The Sophia Laurent Trust, account ending in 7392? Yes. The current balance is $427,300,000. Would you like me to send you the detailed portfolio breakdown? I actually felt dizzy. When was this account opened? The trust was established on your 20th birthday, Miss Laurent. It has been professionally managed for the past 12 years, according to your grandmother's instructions. But I never signed anything. Your grandmother established it as the settler. As the beneficiary, your consent wasn't required until activation, which occurred on your 32nd birthday, which was, I heard papers rustling, 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. The day I'd turned 32, Marguerite had still been alive, though weak. She'd held my hand in her hospital room and said, "Ma chérie, everything you need to know will find you when you're ready." I'd thought she was being poetic. Now I understood she was being literal. The trust has been generating returns and reinvesting profits from various international business holdings, the banker continued. However, the full details of your assets require an in-person meeting. Prince Philippe has been briefed to provide complete information when you arrive in Monaco or Las Vegas. Las Vegas? Yes, Miss Laurent. Your grandmother's primary business operations are based there, though she maintains significant European holdings as well. After I hung up, I sat in the dark for hours, just thinking. Memories flooded back with new meaning. All those summers with Marguerite weren't just quality time. They were training. I remembered being 16, visiting her in Vegas. We'd had dinner at a beautiful hotel restaurant, and afterward, she'd asked me, "What did you notice about the service?" The waiter knew exactly when to refill water glasses without being intrusive, I'd said. And the sommelier made everyone feel knowledgeable about wine, even if they weren't. She'd smiled. "You see what others miss, ma chérie. That's a gift." Or the time when I was 23, and she'd ask my opinion about hotel renovations. Should we update everything to modern minimalism or preserve the classical elements? Preserve the classics, I'd said. People can get minimalism anywhere. They come to special places for beauty and history. Exactly right, she'd said, touching my cheek. You understand that luxury, isn't about trends. It's about creating something timeless. She hadn't been making conversation. She'd been teaching me how to run her business. I remembered another conversation when I was 25. We'd been walking through the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, and I'd stopped in front of a Renaissance painting. "Look at how the artist uses light," I'd said. "It draws your eye to what matters, but the shadows tell the real story." Grandma had squeezed my hand. "That's exactly how you run a business, chérie. The obvious attracts attention, but success comes from understanding what's hidden in the shadows, the details others overlook." At the time, I'd thought we were just discussing art. Now I understood she'd been teaching me about strategy, about reading situations, about seeing beneath surfaces. My phone buzzed with a group text notification. The family chat was buzzing with excitement. Victoria: "Just booked a yacht delivery for next month. Can't wait to start my influencer yacht life." Brandon: "Penthouse renovations starting next week. Going full modern luxury. We're considering selling the Paris apartment. It's beautiful, but maintaining international property is so complex. Anyone want to invest in my new development project? I'm thinking Miami condos." I stared at the messages. They've each inherited millions, and they were already planning to spend it or leverage it or turn it into content. Nobody had asked about me. Nobody had even wondered what was in my envelope. I typed a message and then deleted it. What would I even say? Actually, I'm worth $500 million? They wouldn't believe me. Or worse, they would believe me and suddenly I'd matter to them. The next morning, I called in sick to work and spent the entire day researching. I found articles about Marguerite Laurent, the French immigrant who built a luxury hospitality empire. I'd known she was successful, but I'd never understood the scale. The Laurent collection was mentioned in travel magazines and luxury lifestyle publications, boutique hotels in Monaco, Paris, Beverly Hills, and in Vegas, a property called the Marguerite, described as intimate luxury in the heart of the Strip. I found photographs of the Marguerite online. It was stunning, all Art Deco elegance with modern amenities. Nothing like the massive casino resorts that dominated Vegas. This was something else entirely. Something beautiful. And apparently, I owned it. I found reviews from guests who'd stayed there. "The Marguerite feels like a secret," one wrote. "It's everything Vegas should be. Glamorous, exciting, but with actual soul." Another review said, "This isn't a hotel. It's an experience. Every detail whispers elegance." That evening, my mother called. "Sophia, I wanted to check on you. You left the reception so quickly yesterday. I needed to process everything." "Of course, sweetheart. These things are difficult. Listen, I know you probably feel overlooked with your inheritance, but your grandmother was elderly. Her judgment might not have been what it once was." I gripped the phone tighter. "You think she didn't know what she was doing?" "I'm just saying that leaving you a plane ticket seems odd. If you need financial help, Richard and I would be happy to assist. We know museum work doesn't pay well." "I'm fine, Mom." "Are you actually going to use that ticket? To Las Vegas? Sophia, that city is for people with money to burn. You'll feel completely out of place." I looked at the bank statement on my coffee table. "Maybe I'll fit in better than you think." There was a pause. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to Vegas, Mom. Grandma wanted me to go, so I'm going." "Well, don't spend money you don't have trying to keep up with that crowd. It's not worth going into debt for a vacation." After we hung up, I booked a car service to the airport for the following Monday. Then I called the museum and requested a week of personal time. My supervisor, Dr. Sarah Chen, was understanding. "Take all the time you need, Sophia. Losing a grandmother is never easy. If only she knew what I was actually going to lose myself in." The weekend passed in a blur of research and preparation. I learned that the Marguerite had been open for 15 years, that the Laurent collection had properties on 3 continents, that my grandmother's business empire had been featured in Forbes, though she'd always declined interviews. I found an old article from a hospitality trade magazine. Marguerite Laurent represents old world elegance in a new world industry, the journalist had written. She understands that true luxury isn't about excess. It's about perfection in every detail. The article mentioned that she'd started as a hotel concierge in Manhattan in the 1960s, working her way up while attending night school for business management. By the 1970s, she'd saved enough to buy her first small hotel in Paris. By the 1980s, she'd expanded to Monaco. By the 1990s, she'd conquered Las Vegas. There was a quote from her in the article. Americans think luxury means bigger and louder. Europeans know it means quieter and better. I wanted to bring that understanding to a place that desperately needed it. And I'd never known any of it. She'd kept her success quiet, visiting me in Boston like a normal grandmother, never flaunting wealth or demanding recognition. When I'd asked her once why she lived so modestly, despite being successful, she'd said, "Ma chérie, the truly wealthy never need to prove anything to anyone." I found another article from Forbes, dated 5 years ago. It estimated her net worth at over $2 billion, but noted that she remained elusive, declining all interview requests and maintaining privacy rare among billionaires. The journalist had written, "Laurent's properties speak for themselves. She doesn't need publicity. Her empire whispers where others shout." On Monday morning, I stood in front of my closet, trying to decide what a secret heiress wears to claim her empire. I settled on a simple black dress, the vintage Hermès scarf Marguerite had given me years ago, and the pearl earrings that had been hers before that. The scarf was silk, patterned with gold keys and doors. "Pour ouvrir votre avenir," she'd said when she gave it to me. To open your future. At the time, I'd thought it was just a pretty metaphor. Now, I wondered if she'd been speaking literally about keys to properties I'd someday own. The car service arrived promptly at 8. The driver was professional and courteous, treating my worn suitcase like it was Louis Vuitton. At the airport, I approached the Air France desk with my ticket. The agent's eyes widened when she scanned it. "Miss Laurent, welcome. You're in first class today. Right this way." First class. I'd never flown first class in my life. The cabin was nearly empty, with wide leather seats that looked more like living room furniture than airplane chairs. A flight attendant immediately offered me champagne. "We'll be serving a full breakfast after takeoff, Miss Laurent. Please let me know if you need anything at all." As we climbed into the sky, I sipped champagne and stared out the window. Somewhere below was my family, still laughing about my inheritance, still assuming I was poor, overlooked Sophia. They had no idea what was waiting for me in Vegas. The flight to Las Vegas was surreal. While I ate gourmet meals and reclined in luxury, my phone kept buzzing with family texts. "Brandon. Found a buyer for half the wine collection already. Easy $2 million. Uncle Pierre. The California properties are already getting offers. Real estate is hot right now. Question for the group. Should I renovate the Cap Ferrat villa before I post about it? Or is authentically vintage more on brand? Victoria, darling, definitely renovate. You don't want people thinking we're shabby." I set my phone face down and tried to focus on the clouds outside. The flight attendant noticed my expression. "Long day, Miss Laurent?" "Long week," I admitted. "Well, Las Vegas is good for leaving troubles behind. Fresh start energy, you know?" I smiled. If only she knew. When we landed at McCarran International, I expected to grab my luggage and catch a taxi like any normal tourist. Instead, as I came through the arrival gate, I saw a man in a crisp black suit holding a sign that read, Miss Sophia Laurent, Laurent Collection. My heart hammered. This was real. This was actually happening. Miss Laurent? The driver approached with a professional smile. I'm James. Welcome to Las Vegas. May I take your luggage? Yes, thank you. He led me outside where a pristine black Mercedes waited at the curb. As he loaded my modest suitcase into the trunk, I noticed him glance at it, then at me, as if trying to reconcile the worn bag with the first-class treatment. Is this your first visit to Las Vegas, Miss Laurent? Yes. Well, no. I came once when I was 16, but I barely remember it. Ah, you were here to see your grandmother.
I looked at him sharply.
You knew Marguerite? His expression softened. Everyone at the Marguerite knew Mrs. Laurent. She was remarkable. She'd walk through the hotel every morning, speaking to every employee by name, asking about their families. She remembered everything. I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you. As we drove away from the airport, James gave me a gentle tour. That's the Bellagio, there's Caesar's Palace. The Strip is busy 24 hours a day, but the Marguerite is slightly off the main stretch. Mrs. Laurent preferred intimacy to spectacle. We drove past the massive casino resorts, all flashing lights and crowds. Then we turned onto a quieter street, and suddenly, there it was. The Marguerite. It was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with size or flash. The building was Art Deco, all elegant curves and subtle gold accents. The entrance was marked by a discreet sign and perfectly manicured gardens. Palm trees lined the driveway, and fountains created a peaceful sound that contrasted with the chaos of the Strip nearby. It looked like something that belonged in Monaco or Paris, not Vegas. Welcome home, Miss Laurent, James said quietly. Home. The word made my throat tight. We pulled into a private entrance. A woman in her 40s, Asian American, impeccably dressed, stood waiting at the door. She approached the car with a warm smile. Miss Laurent, I'm Isabel Chen, Director of Operations for the Marguerite. It's an honor to finally meet you. Finally?
Your grandmother spoke of you constantly.
Isabel's eyes were kind. She said you had her eye for beauty and her strategic mind. We've been looking forward to your arrival. I felt overwhelmed. I don't understand. How long have you known about me? Come inside. There's someone waiting who can explain everything. The lobby of the Marguerite took my breath away. Marble floors in cream and gold, crystal chandeliers that looked like they belonged in a palace. Fresh white roses everywhere. The furniture was Art Deco, all clean lines and luxury materials. But it wasn't ostentatious. It was elegant. Every detail was perfect, without being showy. Guest services staff looked up as I entered, and I saw recognition in their faces. They knew who I was. They'd been expecting me. Isabel led me to a private elevator that required a key. We rode to the top floor in silence. When the doors opened, we stepped into a penthouse office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire Strip. Behind an antique desk sat a man in his late 40s, handsome in that European way that suggested generations of good breeding. He wore a perfectly tailored navy suit and had the kind of posture that suggested confidence was his birthright. He stood as we entered. Miss Laurent. His accent was refined. Monaco aristocracy mixed with international education. I am Prince Philippe de Monaco. Your grandmother was one of my dearest friends and most respected clients. Please, sit. I sank into a leather chair, my mind reeling. I understand you have questions, Philippe said, settling back behind the desk. Let me start with the most important answer. Everything you've been told is true. You are the sole owner of the Laurent collection, a portfolio of luxury properties across 3 continents. The trust you received notification of represents liquid assets only. Your full net worth, including real estate and business holdings, is approximately $2.1 billion. The room tilted.
Billion. With a B.
With a B, he confirmed gently. Your grandmother began planning your inheritance when you were still a child, Sophia. May I call you Sophia?
I nodded, unable to speak.
Marguerite established the trust when you turned 20, but she was very specific about the activation timing. She wanted you to live a normal life first, to understand work, responsibility, and the value of money before you learned about your inheritance. But why hide it?
Why not just tell me?
Philippe leaned forward, his expression serious. Because she knew your family. She loved them, but she saw them clearly. Your mother, your uncle, your siblings, they all had their virtues, but they also had a tendency to measure worth in dollars and status in possessions.
Marguerite worried that if they knew about your inheritance, they would either resent you or try to control you. Or worse, you would never know who truly cared about you versus who cared about your money.
I thought about the will reading, about their laughter, about my mother's cruel comment.
She was right, I said quietly.
Your grandmother wanted you to see how they really felt about you, before you gained the power to change that dynamic. She believed you needed to understand your own worth, independent of money. And judging by what I know of you, Sophia, your career, your education, your character, I'd say she was absolutely correct. Isabel spoke up from her position near the window.
Your grandmother visited you several times in Boston. Did you know that? She never told you, but she would stay in a hotel nearby and watch you lead tours at the museum. She'd sit in the back of the gallery and just watch you teach people about art. She was so proud of you. Tears finally spilled down my cheeks.
She never said anything. She didn't want to interfere with your life. She wanted you to build something real before you inherited something extraordinary. She said that if you could find fulfillment and purpose without money, you'd know what to do with money when it came. Philippe opened a folder on his desk. Now, let's discuss your assets. The Marguerite generates approximately $200 million annually. The Monaco Casino, which is a historical property managed as part of the Prince's portfolio, is worth roughly $400 million. The Paris Hotel Collection, 5 properties in total, generates about $150 million per year. And the Beverly Hills Resort, which is extremely popular with celebrities, brings in about $180 million annually. I couldn't process the numbers. They were too large, too abstract. Then there are the passive holdings, he continued. Real estate, art collections, vintage wine inventories, and of course the liquid assets in the trust itself, currently at $427 million. What am I supposed to do with all of this? Whatever you wish, Sophia. You own it all, free and clear. No debt, no partners, no obligations beyond your own conscience. Philippe smiled. Your grandmother did leave you one piece of advice, though. She said to trust your instincts about beauty and meaning. She said you would know what to do. Over the next 3 days, I toured my empire. Isabel Chen became my guide, introducing me to department heads, showing me operational reports, explaining profit margins and occupancy rates. The morning of my second day, Isabel took me through the hotel operations floor by floor. We started in housekeeping, where teams were preparing rooms with military precision. Every room is inspected 3 times, Isabel explained. Your grandmother instituted that policy. She said that luxury was in the details. Guests never noticed, but always felt. I watched a housekeeper arranging towels in perfect alignment, checking that the water glasses were spotless, ensuring the bedding had hospital corners. This wasn't just cleaning, it was craftsmanship. In the kitchen, I met the executive chef, a woman named Marie Claire, who'd trained in Paris. Mrs. Laurent hired me 20 years ago, she said. She told me she wanted food that made people remember Paris, even if they'd never been there. We toured the casino floor next, smaller than the mega resorts, but beautifully designed. The lighting was warm, not harsh. The machines were spaced to allow conversation. The dealers were friendly without being intrusive. We don't push drinks or comp rooms to keep people gambling, Isabel explained. Your grandmother said that wasn't hospitality, it was predation. We do well by treating people with respect. By my third day, I was sitting in on executive meetings. The heads of marketing, finance, operations, and guest services gathered in the penthouse conference room. They spoke about occupancy rates, seasonal strategies, competitor analysis, capital improvements. The marketing director, a sharp woman named Rachel, presented data on guest demographics. We're seeing increased interest from younger travelers who want luxury without ostentation. They value authenticity and experience over pure opulence. That's exactly what Grandma understood, I said, surprising myself by speaking up. She always said people don't remember fancy lobbies. They remember how you made them feel. Rachel smiled. Mrs. Laurent said that in every meeting. She was adamant about it. The finance director, Thomas, walked me through the quarterly reports after the meeting. Your grandmother ran this business with remarkable discipline. She never borrowed money she couldn't pay back within 2 years. She never expanded faster than she could maintain quality. That's why the business survived every recession. She survived the Great Depression as a child in France, I said. She understood that security came from careful planning, not aggressive growth. Exactly. And that's why this empire is stable enough to last generations. And they treated me like I belonged there. Not because I'd earned it yet, but because I owned it. And because I clearly understood what Marguerite had built. The responsibility was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. On my third evening in Vegas, I sat in the penthouse suite that was apparently mine, looking out at the lights of the Strip, when my phone rang. My mother. Sophia, we've barely heard from you. How is your little vacation going? It's educational. That's nice, dear. Listen, we're having a family dinner Thursday night at my house. You should come. We want to discuss Marguerite's estate and make sure everyone's inheritances are being handled properly. Handled properly? Well, yes. Pierre has some concerns about tax implications, and Brandon wants to make sure the wine collection is properly valued. You wouldn't understand the details, but it's important family business. I looked around the penthouse suite that cost more per night than most people earned in a month. I think I'm starting to understand family business pretty well, actually. Don't be silly, Sophia. This is complicated financial planning. It requires expertise. What about my inheritance? I asked. Does that require expertise too? There was a pause. Your plane ticket. Sweetheart, that was sweet of Marguerite, but it's not really the same as managing millions in assets. Right, of course not. So Thursday at 6? Please try to dress appropriately. Richard's business associates might stop by. After we hung up, I made a decision. It was time to stop hiding. I called Felipe. I need to acquire a company. What kind of company? My Uncle Pierre runs a real estate development firm. I want to know everything about it. Within 2 hours, my newly discovered legal team had compiled a complete financial analysis of Pierre Laurent development. The news wasn't good for Uncle Pierre. The company was drowning in debt. Pierre had overextended on a Miami condo project that had stalled during construction. He needed a minimum of $50 million within 60 days, or he'd be forced into bankruptcy. His $35 million inheritance wouldn't be enough after taxes and existing obligations. Can we make an offer?
I asked my lead attorney, a sharp woman named Susan Rodriguez. We can, but Miss Laurent, I should tell you, mixing business with family rarely ends well. I'm aware. Make the offer anyway. $55 million, all cash. We assume the debt, keep all current employees. Terms are, we maintain operational control. And if he asks who the buyer is, I smiled. Tell him it's Neptune International Holdings, a European investment firm interested in expanding into American real estate. Neptune International was one of my shell companies. Pierre would never know he was selling to his niece. The offer went out on Wednesday. By Thursday morning, Pierre had accepted. Thursday evening, I flew back to Boston and drove to my mother's house in Greenwich. The family was already gathered, drinks in hand, celebrating their various inheritance victories. Sophia! Victoria air-kissed me. Look at you, actually on time. Vegas must have been good for you. It was illuminating, I said. Uncle Pierre was in high spirits. Sophia, how's my favorite niece? Still playing with your paintings? Actually, Uncle Pierre, I've been learning about real estate development. It's fascinating how quickly things can change in that market. His expression flickered. It's a volatile industry, that's for sure. I heard you just sold your company. Congratulations. He stared at me. How did you know about that? That's not public yet. Business news travels fast, I said lightly. So who bought it? European investors. Neptune International Holdings. Very generous offer, actually. Saved my ass, if I'm being honest. The Miami project had me overextended. How wonderful that they appeared just when you needed them. During dinner, I watched my family with new eyes. They were so certain of their places in the world. So confident that their inheritances made them important. Brandon was explaining his penthouse renovation plans. I'm going full smart home integration. Voice-activated everything. It'll be sick. Isn't that expensive? I asked innocently. I've got $15 million from the wine collection sale, plus the property value. I can afford it. $15 million, I repeated. That must feel like so much money. It is a lot of money, Sophia. He gave me a pitying look. I know it's probably hard for you to relate. You'd be surprised what I can relate to these days. My mother clinked her glass to get everyone's attention. Before dessert, I want to propose a toast to Marguerite, who built something remarkable and shared it with her family. We're all blessed by her legacy. They raised their glasses. I kept mine on the table. Sophia, your glass, my mother prompted. I don't think I can toast to that. The room went quiet. Excuse me? My mother's voice had an edge. I stood up slowly. You want to toast Marguerite's legacy? Let's talk about her legacy. You each got millions. Beautiful properties, valuable assets. But do any of you actually understand what she built? What it meant to her? Sophia, this isn't appropriate, my mother said. What's not appropriate is how you all treated me at the will reading. Laughing at my envelope. Suggesting that Marguerite didn't love me as much because I didn't get real estate or yachts or wine collections. Victoria rolled her eyes. Oh my God, are you still upset about that? It was just a joke. Was it? Because it didn't feel like a joke when you said I was sad, when Mom said Grandma's judgment was failing, when Uncle Pierre suggested I got Monopoly money. Pierre had the grace to look uncomfortable. Sophia, we didn't mean, yes, you did. You meant every word. You've always thought I was less than you, the struggling museum curator, the one without ambition or prospect. The overlooked granddaughter. Brandon leaned back in his chair. Okay, we're sorry if your feelings got hurt. Can we move on now? Here's the thing about moving on, I said, pulling out my phone. It requires acknowledging what happened.
So let me share some truth with you. I pulled up a document and turned my phone screen toward them. This is Neptune International Holdings. Uncle Pierre, you know that company.
They bought your firm.
Yes, I told you that. Neptune International is a subsidiary of Laurent Global Investments, which is controlled by the Sophia Laurent Trust. The color drained from his face. I bought your company, Uncle Pierre, for $55 million. You don't work for European investors. You work for me. Complete silence. My mother found her voice first. That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. I pulled up another document. The Marguerite Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas. Annual revenue, $200 million. Owner, Sophia Laurent. The Monaco Casino. Historical property value, $400 million. Owner, Sophia Laurent. The Laurent Collection, Paris. 5 boutique hotels. Owner, Sophia Laurent. With each revelation, I watched their faces cycle through disbelief, shock, and dawning horror. The envelope you all laughed at? It contained notification that I own a luxury hospitality empire worth approximately $2.1 billion. Grandma didn't leave me an empire. I've owned it since I turned 20. She just waited until I was 32 to tell me. Victoria's phone slipped from her hand and clattered on the table. Brandon's mouth was hanging open. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Uncle Pierre just stared at me, with something that might have been respect, for the first time in my life. So when you toast Grandma's legacy, I continued quietly, remember this. She saw all of you clearly. She knew exactly who would value family and who would value money. She structured her will to prove a point, and you all proved it beautifully. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. Sophia, wait, my mother called. We need to discuss this. There are family considerations, tax implications. We should what, Mom? Help you figure out how to get a piece of my inheritance? Sorry, but I don't need your help with my $2.1 billion. I have excellent advisors. I left them sitting in shocked silence and drove back to my apartment. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. Uncle Pierre, Sophia, we need to talk about the company sale. There are things I didn't understand. Is this real? Are you actually a billionaire? Sophia, please call me back. I didn't mean those things I said. Mom, your behavior last night was completely inappropriate. We need to have a family meeting immediately. I ignored them all and called Philippe instead. How are you feeling? He asked. Powerful, scared, vindicated. All of it. That sounds about right. What would you like to do next? I want public acknowledgments from each of them for how they treated me. Social media, wherever they announced their own inheritances. I want them to admit they were wrong about me. That's fairly harsh, Sophia. Is it? They publicly humiliated me. Now they know what that feels like. Over the next week, the acknowledgments appeared one by one. My Uncle Pierre posted on LinkedIn. I recently sold my company to what I thought were foreign investors. I've since learned the buyer was my niece, Sophia Laurent, whose business acumen and financial position I significantly underestimated. I'm honored to work for her and deeply regret any dismissive comments I made about her capabilities. The post received hundreds of comments. Former business associates expressed surprise. Current employees expressed relief that the company had been saved. Some commented on the irony of Pierre now working for the niece he'd patronized for years. My mother's Facebook post was longer and more emotional. I want to publicly apologize to my daughter, Sophia. At my mother's will reading, I made a cruel comment suggesting Marguerite didn't love her. I was completely wrong. My mother saw in Sophia what I failed to see. A brilliant, capable woman, worthy of an extraordinary legacy. I'm sorry, Sophia. I hope someday you'll forgive me. Her friends from the country club filled the comments with shocked reactions. Some were supportive. Others were clearly enjoying the schadenfreude of watching someone so status-conscious have to publicly admit she'd been wrong about her own daughter. Brandon's Instagram post was brief but genuine. I laughed at my sister's inheritance. Turns out, she's a billionaire, and I'm an idiot. Sophia, I'm sorry. His tech bro friends responded with a mix of disbelief and mockery. Someone commented, "Bro, your sister owns hotels and you're living in one you inherited? That's rough." Victoria's post was the most public. She'd filmed a video, no makeup, eyes red from crying. I need to talk about privilege and assumptions. When my grandmother died, I got a yacht. My sister Sophia got an envelope. I laughed. I literally laughed at her, because I assumed value meant visible wealth. I was so wrong. Sophia inherited a multi-billion-dollar empire because she earned it through character, intelligence, and grace. I inherited a boat because I was born. The difference matters. I'm sorry, Sophia. You deserved better than my mockery. The video went viral within hours. Major news outlets picked up the story. Business journalists started digging into the Laurent collection's history. Lifestyle magazines wanted to profile me as a secret heiress. Financial publications wanted to analyze how a teacher became a billionaire overnight. I watched the media frenzy from my penthouse in Vegas, feeling both vindicated and exhausted. This was what Grandma had wanted to protect me from for so long. The attention, the assumptions, the way money changed how people saw you. I declined all interview requests and focused on learning my business. Isabel Chen became my mentor in operations. She taught me how to read occupancy reports, understand seasonal fluctuations, evaluate staff performance, and spot trends in guest satisfaction data. Philippe taught me about international finance, how to structure acquisitions, evaluate investment opportunities, manage currency risk, and protect assets across multiple jurisdictions. My legal team helped me understand the complex structures protecting my wealth. Trusts within trusts, shell companies, privacy agreements, tax strategies that were entirely legal but incredibly sophisticated. And slowly, I began to understand what Grandma had built. It wasn't just hotels and casinos. It was jobs for thousands of people. It was beauty in a world that often prioritized profit over aesthetics. It was a legacy of elegance and integrity. 6 months after the revelation, I invited my family to the Marguerite for a private dinner. They arrived looking nervous. Uncle Pierre, who now reported to me through layers of management, seemed uncomfortable in a suit. My mother wore a dress I recognized as several years old, her designer shopping apparently curtailed. Brandon and Victoria were quieter than I'd ever seen them. I'd arranged for James to pick them up from the airport. He later told me they'd been silent during the drive, staring out the windows like tourists in an unfamiliar city. We gathered in a private dining room overlooking the strip. The windows offered a panoramic view of the lights and chaos below, but inside it was peaceful. Candlelight, white roses, the kind of intimate elegance that was Grandma's signature. I'd chosen the menu myself, working with Marie Claire to create something that honored Grandma's memory. French onion soup, the way she'd made it when I was a child. Coq au vin, her Sunday dinner staple. A tarte tatin for dessert that tasted exactly like the ones she'd taught me to make during those summers in Paris. "Thank you for coming," I said, once we were all seated. "Sophia," my mother started, "we've been wanting to talk to you for months. You've been so distant. I needed space to figure out who I am without your expectations weighing on me." "And who are you?" Uncle Pierre asked quietly. I considered the question. I'm someone who owns luxury hotels, but still thinks about the housekeepers who clean the rooms. Someone who manages billions, but remembers what it felt like to worry about rent. Someone who forgave you all, even though you didn't deserve it. "We don't deserve forgiveness," my mother said, tears in her eyes. "The things we said, the way we treated you, No, you don't deserve it, I agreed. But I'm giving it anyway. Not because you've earned it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting me. Brandon leaned forward. Sophia, is there any way I could work for you? Not in some executive role I haven't earned. I mean actually work. Learn the business from the ground up. I studied my twin brother. He looked genuinely humble for the first time in his life. You'd start in hotel operations, probably housekeeping or front desk. Minimum wage. No special treatment. I'll take it. Victoria spoke up next. I deleted all my social media accounts. The influencer thing felt disgusting after what happened. I've been thinking about going back to school. Maybe studying hospitality management? I could arrange internships, I offered. But you'd have to work like everyone else. I want to work like everyone else. I'm tired of being decorative. Uncle Pierre cleared his throat. Sophia, your management team has been excellent. The changes you've implemented in my old company, they're smart, strategic. I'm learning things I should have known years ago. You're a good developer, Uncle Pierre. You just got overextended. It happens. My mother was the last to speak. I don't know how to fix what I broke between us, Sophia. I don't even know if it's fixable. But I want you to know that I see you now. Really see you. And I'm so, so proud of who you are. I felt tears building. That's all I ever wanted, Mom. To be seen. We ate dinner together, conversation flowing more naturally than it had in years. They asked questions about my business, my life in Vegas, my plans for the future. Real questions, not patronizing ones. After dessert, as we stood on the balcony looking at the lights, my mother stood beside me. Your grandmother was right about everything, she said softly. She knew you were special. She knew you needed to find your own strength. And she knew we weren't capable of seeing your value without this wake-up call. She gave you all exactly what you could handle, I replied. Millions, but not enough to destroy you. Me, she gave everything, because she knew I could carry the weight. Can you forgive us? Really forgive us? I turned to look at her. I'm trying. Some days are easier than others. That's fair. That's more than fair. A year later, I stood in the grand ballroom of the Marguerite, preparing to announce the Marguerite Laurent Foundation for Arts and Culture. The endowment was $200 million, funding museum education programs, scholarships for art students, and preservation of historical properties. The ballroom was filled with philanthropists, museum directors, education advocates, and business leaders. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and white roses covered every surface. A string quartet played Debussy in the corner, Grandma's favorite composer. I'd spent months planning this moment, working with foundation directors, legal advisors, and education experts to ensure the money would actually make a difference. The foundation would provide full scholarships to students pursuing careers in arts and culture. It would fund after-school programs in underserved communities. It would preserve historical buildings that developers wanted to demolish. It would do exactly what Grandma would have wanted: create beauty and opportunity in equal measure. My family was there. Brandon, now assistant manager at the Marguerite's front desk, genuinely good at hospitality. He'd found satisfaction in work that helped people, in creating moments of joy for guests. I'd watched him transform from entitled heir to genuinely kind professional. Just last week, a guest had written a review specifically praising Brandon's attentiveness and warmth. Victoria, finishing her degree in hotel management and dating a sous chef from one of our Paris properties. She'd discovered that creating beauty was more fulfilling than consuming it. Her Instagram account now featured recipes and hospitality tips instead of yacht selfies. She was happier than I'd ever seen her, Uncle Pierre running his company profitably for the first time in years, humbled by the experience of reporting to someone he'd once dismissed. He'd called me last month to thank me for saving his business. "I didn't just lose a company," he'd said. "I gained a teacher." My mother, volunteering with the foundation, using her social connections for something meaningful instead of mere status. She'd thrown herself into fundraising with genuine passion, discovering that helping others felt better than impressing them. They'd all changed, or maybe they'd just finally seen what Grandma had seen all along, that true wealth isn't measured in assets, but in character. Before I gave my speech, I slipped away to the office Philippe had set up for me. On the wall hung a portrait of Marguerite, elegant in her signature Hermès scarf, painted from a photograph taken in her 60s when she was at the height of her powers. "I hope I'm making you proud, Mime," I whispered. The portrait didn't answer, but I felt her presence. In the elegance of the hotel she'd built, in the business she'd nurtured, in the granddaughter she'd believed in when no one else did. I touched the Hermès scarf around my own neck, the one she'd given me years ago. The pattern of keys and doors seemed to shimmer in the light. Then I walked back to the ballroom to announce a legacy that honored hers. As I stepped up to the microphone, I looked out at the crowd. Philanthropists, business leaders, museum directors. And in the front row, my family, applauding with genuine pride. My grandmother taught me that true luxury isn't about what you own, I began. It's about what you create, what you preserve, what you pass forward to those who come after you. The Marguerite Laurent Foundation exists to ensure that young people who feel overlooked, who doubt their worth, who struggle to see their own potential, have access to the transformative power of arts and culture. Because sometimes, the most overlooked person in the room is exactly the one with the most to offer the world. The applause was thunderous. As I stepped away from the microphone, the first scholarship recipient approached the stage. Maria Santos, a 17-year-old from a low-income neighborhood in Las Vegas who wanted to study art history but couldn't afford college. She hugged me, tears streaming down her face. "You don't know what this means," she whispered. "I thought I'd have to give up my dreams." "I know exactly what it means," I whispered back. "And you're going to do amazing things." After the announcement, as champagne flowed and people networked, I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations. Museum directors thanked me for supporting institutions that struggled for funding. Teachers told me about students who would benefit from after-school programs. Preservationists described historical buildings that could now be saved. This was what wealth should do, not just accumulate, but circulate, not just impress, but improve. My childhood friend from summers in France had flown in for the event. He'd been my confidant through all of this, the one person who'd known me before and after the money, who'd never changed how he saw me. "Your grandmother would be so proud," he said, slipping his hand into mine. "I hope so. I know so. She told me once, the last summer I saw her, that you had her soul. Not just her business sense, but her understanding of what matters." I leaned my head on his shoulder and looked out at the city that had become my home. A year ago, I'd been invisible. Now, I was exactly where I was meant to be. Not because of the money, because I'd finally learned to see myself the way Marguerite had always seen me. Capable, worthy, and ready to build something beautiful. The lights of Las Vegas sparkled below us, millions of dreams playing out in the darkness. And I understood, finally, what Grandma had been trying to teach me all along. That inheritance isn't what you receive, it's what you become. In the ballroom behind us, my family was laughing together. Real laughter, not the performative kind. Brandon was telling a story about a difficult guest he'd helped, animated and proud. Victoria was showing Mom pictures of a recipe she'd perfected. Uncle Pierre was deep in conversation with a real estate developer, discussing sustainable building practices. They weren't perfect, but they were trying. And that was enough. "Are you happy?" Etienne asked, turning to face me. I thought about the question, about the museum job I'd loved but left behind, about the family who dismissed me but now respected me, about the empire I'd inherited and the foundation I'd created. "I'm more than happy," I said finally. "I'm free to be exactly who I am, without apology or explanation." That's what Grandma gave me. Not just money, but permission to take up space in the world. "She'd be proud," Etienne said, kissing my forehead. "I hope so. I really hope so." Chapitre 22. Peter Jacked 22. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment about a time when someone underestimated you. Remember, your worth isn't determined by how others see you. It's determined by how you see yourself. Subscribe for more stories of the underestimated who became unstoppable. Thank you for joining me on my journey. And never forget, the most powerful inheritance isn't money. It's the knowledge of your own capabilities.